Thank you for coming this morning, or this afternoon, I guess. We've got the only thing between you and lunch is me, so we'll get this done quickly. What I'm going to do is we're going to talk about a little bit, people get confused about who HP Inc. is, so I need to describe that a little bit. I've had to tell many people while we're here this week as to who we really are. We're going to talk about our big data opportunities at HP, what we're working on, the pain that we've gone through to get where we are today, and what our solution to that has been. And then we're going to talk about the services that we're enabling, our customer-facing type services that we're enabling using big data. So, who is HP Inc.? All right, if you start on the right-hand side, okay, HP Inc. is about printers and personal system products. Where'd we come from, though? Way back in 1939, the garage in Palo Alto, Hewlett-Packard. Now, we're no longer Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard really doesn't exist anymore. So I want to make that known because HP is not Hewlett-Packard. Actually, we were split in 2015 into Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. And so there's HP Inc. and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise focuses on servers and software, and we're focused on personal system devices and printers. Now, where I came from is I actually came from Compaq. So Compaq was merged at one time back in 2002. I began working on data way back then, and so I'm very excited about where we've come to today with big data. So where are we with our business opportunities? So from HP standpoint, product improvement is one big area. So taking data from our devices, bringing it in, and actually understanding how we can better the products that we deliver. This is both for printers and personal systems. Cost avoidance is another big area. That's one of the key areas that we started looking at first, where we realized that, hey, there's a lot of processes that we can clean up, and we started to see what's actually being shipped out to our customers. And then user profiling is a big area of understanding how our customers use our products, what they want from us, and how we can make them better for them. Business optimization and customer services. Customer services, which I'll talk about later, we're actually creating customer-facing services from our big data. Since we've split from the Hewlett-Packard sense, managed services is a big opportunity for HP. So where'd we come from? So back before we actually split the company, HP was invested into its own software. We actually, remember we started the company back in 1939. We're very much a large company, over 300,000 employees. We had data warehouses everywhere, data warehouses that were semi-accessible, I would say. And we basically scraped data from them, and we tried to bring them together and pull them into some kind of reports, right? So analytics equaled reports. And that culture, is very much in a lot of large companies today, right? So where are we, it wasn't working for us from a standpoint of we wanted to be able to use all this data, turn it in, and monetize it internally and externally. Now, it wasn't like the software that we were using was bad. It was just the way that we're using it. So for instance, Hadoop, that's where we started. We pulled Hadoop in actually in 2014. We started pulling it out of our data warehouses, putting it into Hadoop, right? Well, that's great, but we didn't program on top of Hadoop. Okay, so we basically threw the data then into Vertica. Okay, we used a lot of SQL then. Trying to use the data out of Vertica, we hit it with a lot of SQL. Brought tools in like Tableau, ClickView, what have you, in order to try to use that data. Well, what happened when you got 300,000 people in a company trying to access Vertica, and basically how many Vertica instances can you have, and then you got internal data centers, right? Data centers cost a lot of money, and so here we have to grow these data centers. Well, who's going to throw the money into that? Where's the budget going to come from? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to get the new hard drives? Who's going to buy the new servers? Where are we going to put these new servers? And we couldn't move, okay? We're stuck. So the other key thing is listed around here on the pain is all of these were pain points for us, right? Every one of them. And so when you look at it, and we're trying to get information out of data, we've got data analysts basically sucking this data in wherever they can, pulling it into spreadsheets, pulling it into whatever, trying to look for insights into that data. Well, how many data analysts can you hire? It just wasn't working. So there was another even bigger pain point. We just, all of a sudden, the board of directors decides to split the company in 2015, right? Well, they decided this in 2014. So what do you think happens in 2014, or 2015, I'm sorry, leading up to the split? There's no budget. There's no dollars. There's no IT resources, right? Where are all the IT resources? They got to figure out how to split the assets, right? And oh my gosh, there's no money, right? So what happened is from HP Inc. standpoint, that side of the company, we said, hey, our strategy longer term is going to be the cloud. We started moving to the cloud, okay? This opened up tons of opportunity for us. So large corporations that are stuck in their data centers and what have you, this is a very, very common story. So we had a lot of data glut, right? Just, it's flat out. We couldn't get the information out of our data. So where we've come, from there, and where are we today, right? This is our platform today. We have our data sources on the left, which I mentioned to you that in our case, it's devices. So in our devices, we can design into them, we can instrument those devices, our printers, ink, how's it being used, what's being used, what are the problems you're having with these ink cartridges, paper flow through our printers, we've got large print, we've got 3D print now, all of that can be instrumented. The same thing with our personal system products. One of the things, for instance, in our commercial line of products is we brag about the security in them. Well, what do? We actually have an ARM processor running right beside the main CPU, the Intel processor, and what is it doing? It's monitoring what's happening at the firmware level. Well, from there we can see, is there an attack on the firmware? We can get that data back and we can basically see what's happening across a fleet of products to see if the firmware layer is being attacked. Now, you say, well, if it's being attacked, it's going to go down. Well, the other thing that we do is we auto recover. So we can see if there's actually a problem happening at that firmware layer and we can actually proactively service it, right? So that's one example. And so if you take that and you say, okay, I can instrument the products, and now what I can do is I can turn that around, come back to you as a company and say, okay, we can offer you a product at a lower cost or at a higher time, lower cost of service, total cost of ownership, everything around that. So we got to bring that data in. So remember I mentioned earlier in our other infrastructure, well, in a large corporation, what you've got is your security is a big firewall around your company. That's the old-fashioned way, right? The problem is, how do you get data in, how do you get data out? It doesn't work very well. And so, okay, we can go, put in place Kafka, we can go put more servers in, we can go build that up ourselves, we can go throw more money into that. The problem is that after I spend all that money, I still don't have insights to my users, and I've just blew my whole budget, right? And I mentioned to you that, hey, there's no money for us to spend to go build all this out. Also, we don't have any resources to do this. So in the cloud, immediately what we did was we said, hey, I can just go pull up a service, I can pull in Kinesis, and I can bring data in, I can go throw it into a bucket in S3, bam, I solved that problem, right? That's what we did. In fact, we transformed, in one case, one of our instances, we transformed our data that was going internally from our devices, we flipped it in less than 30 days over the Christmas holidays, and basically brought that data into Amazon and started dumping data from 20 million devices into S3, right? That's how quickly we could do it in the case of using the cloud. And we were like, wow, look at this. Handcuffs are off. No longer are we bound by IT, the old IT paradigms, right? So next what we did was, we had to get that data in and we had to start, with the old-fashioned way of putting it into a data warehouse. So we're like, okay, we're going to take some of this data, we're going to put it into Redshift. We can immediately start using the old way we did things with Tableau. We can park that up to it and we can look at the data, right? Well, that got us started. So then we said, we're still got a problem here. We still can't get the insights to our end users. We can't develop services. All that has to be programmed. That's not, it's a whole different, it's not the analytics and the way that we look at things today. So what we need to do is we need to figure out how do we program our analytics? How do we put that programming layer in there? And that's where we invested in Spark. Okay, we had already started looking at Spark before we made this transformation. We were in Hadoop. We already had Spark instances, but the problem is that was a server sitting over in the corner somewhere that we loaded Spark up on. Well, I could do that on my laptop, actually. So it was like, well, that's great, but that's not getting us anywhere. So we took Spark, we moved our ingestion code over to Spark. Immediately we saw advantages there. We still had problems, though, with the area of how do I have a full workflow of where I can create code in Spark, I can use that for internal insights, I can also flow that to actually doing external services. Because right now the problem we ran into is we started showing our executive teams, hey, look what we can do here. Or they're like, oh, wow, let's create some AI services, right? We can sell this to our customers. Like, wait a minute, time out. We're not ready for that yet, right? We need to turn this stuff into applications already. And so, so that's where we actually made our investment into Databricks, because one of the problems we had to remember is that, okay, we were able to have a little skunk team working on this, right? So we got 6 people working on this. There's other teams in the print organization that had similar things where they've got people working on this. We came together one day, so let's work together on this. And we were able to join together and say, let's develop and have this common platform across HP, right? Then we can have a common platform. Of course, now we're only 60,000 employees because we split the company, much easier now. We don't have to deal with, our common platform has to use HP software. That's good. So we got this common platform, and Databricks was a part of that. And the reason is because we didn't want to go spend time, because I found that the 6 guys that I had, they were over there programming ways for us to basically run things in Spark. And I'm going, well, how's that going to work, right? I'm using all my resources to program in Spark. So we basically applied them. We pulled Databricks in. We want to use Databricks for their expertise. We don't need to be experts in that area, and we can leverage off of that and go focus on getting the data or the information out of the data. The other thing we had to look at was security and privacy. We had to have a very, very secure solution, and we also have to meet the privacy policies that HP has in place, because we're getting data from devices, right? Very important that we have that in place. So that's another layer that we also invested into. Now, we also have global function data. What this is like how many products did we sell, how many shipments have we made, how many service events are occurring, financial type data. All of that is being transformed as well in parallel with this work going on into a hybrid type cloud solution, right? Well, we need access to that data too. Okay, so we have to work the interface into getting that data. I've got a problem here. Hold on one second here. All right, there we go. All right, so why Databricks? Okay, I talked a little bit about this, but I want to talk about the workflow that we put into place. So we start with a sandbox where we actually start working ad hoc on analytics. This is where we're working on internal insights, maybe coming from the businesses and what have you. We can pick up a notebook, we can start working from it, we can work from our S3 bucket that has our data in it. And now when we want to take that, maybe we want to turn that into an application service, right? So now we move it to the development layer. We take that same notebook, we start to harden that, but we can still migrate that through Databricks in order to process that into the next layer, run that through QA, and then finally into prod. This was very important to us. Why? Because I don't want to have a team of 10 DevOps that have to basically develop the code that has to go manage this and actually, a full-time job from that standpoint. I want to spend the money on data scientists, right, in order to create more of this. So Databricks was very important for us from a cost standpoint there. The other thing is, with Databricks is we don't have to worry about managing the EMR layer directly. We can, if we wanted to, we can take some of that code, we can go optimize it, we can run it in EMR. Maybe it runs faster there, maybe not. Do we really care? With the cost advantages that we basically can obtain from a resource standpoint, it just didn't make sense for us to actually keep throwing more resources at that end of it, right? So this is where we're at today, where we're now ramping up and we have our data, we got Databricks up and running, we're now bringing people on board to actually start using Databricks, bringing all of our developers on board so that we can, all of our flow is now going to basically start with a notebook, right? It's going to start with a Databricks notebook and then it's going to flow through and then we can collaborate. That's another key area is collaboration. That's already started, which is very interesting for us. Good example is that the other day, one of our developers, first thing I told our developers is you got to get these guys on there, right? So it's like, if you don't use the notebook, you don't try the notebook, then are you going to really, know that, really cares, is that notebook even better than the old way I was doing it? So if I got developers all over the place that are developing on their Spark, on their individual VMs that are on their notebooks and what have you, we can't see what's going on. But if we put them in the notebooks, Now we can collaborate, we can see what's going on, they can immediately share a notebook and say, hey, this is what I've got here, let's take a look at it. Oh, wait a minute, maybe you're looking at that wrong, let's pull in a subject matter expert. The workflow is much smoother and much faster using that kind of methodology. Here's an example instance of what we've got in, running inside of AWS. We chose AWS as our platform. There's other cloud platforms, but that's the direction we decided to go because of some other work that was going on with our services. This is very common. The key thing you can see here is we're leveraging AWS services as much as possible. We're focused on trying to focus on the layer down here with the data science, right? The data science work that's going on to develop that code that's going to pull the insights out. As far as new services go, these are some of the services that HP is delivering today. This is going to continue to grow. HP Touchpoint Manager is a set of managed services for personal system devices. Workspace is aimed at our mobility. There's a new product called Elite X3 that actually we just shipped. The Elite X3 is a mobile product that can be used to access all of your software as a VM. So basically you've got your phone, it can be deployed into an enterprise or business environment. And we've instrumented that. We instrumented the device, the services around that. And so it's one of our first products where we fully basically decided from day one it's designed for analytics. And we've got other things like smart device services. So on our print side of the smart device services is similar, where a set of managed services around print in the commercial space. You may have heard of ePrint or Instant Ink. Those are other services that we offer. Instant Ink is basically, instead of you having to worry when to replace your ink, it automatically provides you ink when you need it. And all of these things that as we go forward, we're going to continue to add to this portfolio. So one of the things I forgot to mention is internally we use the 3 A's, accumulate, analyze, and act. Basically it's around data, analytics, and the people that how do we get them to actually use that information. So we're driven off of this as a strategy. These are the reasons, and now you look in the 3 pillars here, our goals and objectives in these 3 areas. And then just to leave you, closing comments here, HP's invested into big data. We're aimed at serving our customers better, making new products, building new services. We have strategically selected Spark with Databricks as our big data platform. That's our go-forward direction here in 2017. And we've partnered with Databricks in order to reduce the time to market, that's huge, and also the development cost of delivering a Spark solution. Okay? Questions? No? Okay, well, if anybody's, question here.
In terms of time to get to insight, how much you need from the previous implementation, and do you think you have more space to do that?
Absolutely. So previously, with the data warehouse-like approach, we basically had to take the data, load it into Redshift, and then from there, park some kind of SQL tool up against it in order to start looking for the insights. The difference now is that we start with the notebook, right? Starting with the notebook, again, you can still start with SQL. So immediately, though, instead of having to worry about Redshift, we can immediately go to our repository of data, access it, pull it in what you need. What the other cool thing is, you got the full access to all the data because we weren't loading everything into Redshift. We're going to, as the previous talk, that we had before me, mentioned is, you're going to load into Redshift what's used most often, depending upon the apps, that you're developing and what have you, right? That's what we're using Redshift for. So from a time standpoint, I challenged one of our data scientists. I says, here, you did this way, now go do it with the notebook in Databricks. He reduced his time, and by the way, he was coming up the learning curve on Databricks as well, but he cut it down at least by 1/3, if not more, of the time he was able to turn around the analysis. And that was just inexperienced, no experience at all, right? So I expect that, with the collaboration and everything else, I expect us, and here's the other thing. If you're bringing on, if you're growing your team, right, and you got to bring on other people, right, it's going to really reduce the time that it takes us to ramp new people onto it. And the other thing, it opens up the opportunity from a resource standpoint for us to tap into other resources like contracted resources and crowdsourcing. Because now it's easier for us to bring them onto our environment and be able to use a workflow that's well-defined. And then as the experience grows, then we expect that we're going to get a lot more velocity as far as providing insights and new services. That's our goal in 2017. Thanks. I'm sorry, quick. We're pulling in, we're not in the petabyte range yet. We expect to get there. We're in terabytes, but when you take the data, actually what's funny is that in our case, we actually have 3 instances of this running, our big data instances, right? So we've got 2 in print. One's aimed at large print and consumer. The other one's aimed at commercial print, laser type print and what have you. And then we have personal systems. So instead of having one big giant, everybody working out of one instance, we divided it that way because there's different data sets. I mean, they're different devices. We collaborate across, like, you know, big learning best practices and what have you. But if you combine all that together, now you're starting to get into the petabyte range because we're pulling from so many devices. Like, for instance, we've got, you know, 100 in the personal system side alone, we got over hundreds of millions of devices out there, and we're not getting data from all of them today. We're pulling in data from probably about 20 to 25 million today. So, okay. Question back there? Yes. No, actually, S3 is alone is very inexpensive. I mean, putting data into S3, no problem. It's when you start to take data out and process it where they charge you. So the way that their cloud model works anyway is that the cost of putting data in S3 is nothing, and virtually nothing in our budget, right? And if you look at it, just to give you some idea, for us ramping on what we're doing here with devices, our budget for just S3 compute, Databricks compute, the cost of the AWS services we're using, Kinesis and S3, some Redshift, we're easily underneath $300K. And that's phenomenal because for us to just spin a project up in previous world of our old IT data warehouse and what have you, a small project would cost us that much. And the other thing is rapid prototyping. I mean, we can immediately, if you got a question, you know, anybody's got, you know, someone comes to us and says, hey, we want to go look at this and what have you, we can spin it up like that. We couldn't spin up a project like that before. And the whole S3 bucket is hugely a better methodology of actually, you know, storing your data and managing your data and being able to access your data. It's just huge. So the S3 cost is very minimal to us. It doesn't even show up. Okay. Questions? Others?
About the quality of the data. You get data from multiple devices, or sometimes unreliable media, different firmware versions.
Yep. Well, the raw data comes in, you got raw data, right? That's first. And one of the problems we had is we had to move immediately to try to deliver in services. I mentioned the pull we had from our executives that wanted to spin that up. So we went from raw data to, you know, cleaning that data on you know, the data that we needed for the services, basically clean that and use it, right? And join it, put it in the right format and what have you. What we're moving to is a 3-layer level where we got the raw data, and then what we do is, you know, when we bring the data in from our devices, at least this is one example, is that we bring it in JSON, and we have multiple data classes. So right from the beginning, we define that, okay, here's the different data classes. Battery, hard drive, operating system, applications. You know, we have different data classes like that, right? It comes in one stream, we split it, and then what we do is now we're actually using Spark streaming. We already moved to that. We haven't used structured streaming yet, but we're going to take advantage of that as well. Is that when we split it, we then bring it in and we partition it at that point so we can access it, and it's also partitioned by day. So it's very easy for us to query, which was great. And we store it in Parquet or ORC. We're moving to Parquet completely on all of our data across this you know, common platform we have. So with the data like that, the second part of the cleaning is we're going to develop the per data class, the cleaning algorithms, you know, the work that needs to be done there to clean it. And it's going to almost have to be a machine learning type algorithm, to tell you the honest truth, because once we learn something, it's not always dirty data. One time when we first started looking at this, we made the mistake that it was dirty data and it was actually bad product. And what we did was we filtered it out and put it to the side because it was so out of whack. The outlier was so out of whack, we said, and then we went back and we found out that there was escalations occurring. We back looked at the data and go, oh, there was. And so, that's part of what we're working on right now is detect the outliers, then determine do we filter it or is it something we really ought to point out to the product teams that they need to go take a look at. And we got to do that for every single data class. So that's why we want to do structured streaming, because once we develop the algorithms, we can actually just run and process it on the way in. We don't have to read the data back out, write it back again. So that's just an optimization. One thing we learned is don't boil the ocean, build a bathtub, and then just keep growing it, right? And so just do it rapidly, learn from it, rapidly prototype, because in the cloud it doesn't cost you anything to do that, and it's very easy to do. So, question, sorry, right here. Right. With S3, we decided on Parquet. Recently, we went ORCN Parquet, right? We had two different teams that came up with two different answers. Recently, we're learning, where direction of Spark's going and the optimizations that are occurring around Parquet. Going through some initial training in Spark and Databricks, and this is why we want to rely upon the Spark experts, and us, is we're moving towards Parquet completely because of the optimizations. Now, when it goes into Redshift, basically what you're doing there is in AWS anyway, you have to convert that to CSV and then you run a copy command into Redshift. But, like I said, previously the concept of bronze, silver, and gold data, it's going to be our gold data that's in Redshift. The reason is to serve up applications. So, SQL, we're trying to move most of our data science or data analytics work with SQL, we're trying to go directly against S3. So you're either going to use the Databricks notebooks and Spark SQL and everything else there, which is great. That's what we're trying to move all of our people to. Another option is Presto-like, and of course Athena is Presto inside of AWS. That's another option. So, and some of our guys are doing that today. So when they got to turn something around really quickly, they just do a SQL query in Athena and get the information. So. But I'm trying to get them to just open up the notebook and do it. Because then they can save the notebook off and the next person that comes along can take advantage of it, right? Another question? Was there one in the back there? Oh, sorry. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, the act portion of things, right? That's the most difficult. And so first thing we did was we didn't say everything's all one instance or one group. So the first thing we realized is that we didn't want to center this as an IT sort of entity. So we actually built this up in the business units. We have two primary business units in HP, print and personal systems. And then it breaks down from there. And so we've got leadership teams in both areas, and we've got teams centered around that, or actually multiple teams in some cases, around these instances. And the reason is because they're subject matter experts in their data. You asked me to look at 3D print data, and I'm like, but actually there are collaboration points. They use hard drives, we use hard drives. We have hard drive monitoring algorithms, they want to use them. So we collaborated across, right? And as far as getting it out to the masses, that's one of our biggest challenges, actually. And so the other part is that you want this information in their hands so that when they're making new products, making decisions and what have you, they have it to make those decisions. So that's one of the things we're looking at right now is what kind of applications can we develop for internal consumption of the data? Because one thing we found is just putting it into a dashboard. Dashboards are great, they're fancy, everything else. Putting a dashboard doesn't mean that they're going to get the information out or get the information out when they need it. So a lot of it is ad hoc now. A lot of people are, what we had to do is go out and do a lot of evangelization. And then you had to show them what's available. And then they come back to you. And then we have to figure out how to automate it because we don't have enough people to, like you mentioned. And so that's what we're working towards is automate it and develop in services such that they can access it on their own automatically. But the other thing is we don't we democratize it as well, right? So if they want to actually get access to their information and use it themselves directly, we'll bring them on board. We'll provide them some simple training to get in there with SQL, and be able to access what they can. It doesn't always work well that way, but it's another way that we're trying to figure out what's the best way to collaborate with these other teams. Now, they're actually coming to us, though, and one of the mantras we have in our personal systems group is everything that we build, software or hardware, has got to be instrumented to collect data. Of course, we have to get the consent of the user and everything else. That's the other part, but the point is at least it's ready to capture data, right? That's how we're going forward. And we've already made lots of strides in that area. So, any other questions? Okay, I'll be available up here if anybody wants to, or hit me anywhere along the hallways or whatever. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Lunch break.